before I started asking her out on dates. So she was the one who initiated things between us, not me, my wife.
Today we are going to discuss about marriage culture in Pakistan and USA, and it is very interesting for young people. If you are a young person and watching this video is for you because we are going to discuss marriage culture. How marriage is taking place in Pakistan and USA. Marriage culture is not only a tradition, but this is the foundation of a family system in Pakistan especially and USA as well. So let's ask some question to Mr. Tim for USA and Hamad Hassan for Pakistan, and let's see what they are going to teach us about marriage culture for Pakistan and USA. By the way, if you have missed previous episode, you can click over here to watch them, and let's get started.
So my first question, Mr. Tim, is how is typically decided who the man will marry to in your culture?
In America, until about 100 years ago, the tradition was that the parents would make that decision. But I would say for the last 100 years or more, it's the man and the woman themselves who decide who they want to marry. We call that a love marriage rather than an arranged marriage.
Okay, Hamad, would you please tell me how is it typically decided who the man will marry in your culture, Pakistan?
Well, in Pakistan, arranged marriage culture is very much common because it is close to the religion, and the people are very take care of their traditions. And arranged marriage is one of the tradition here in Pakistan.
Okay, my next question, Mr. Tim. In America, I understand that men usually ask the woman to marry. Does it ever happen to other way around, meaning that the women ask the man to marry?
Very much that it does happen both ways. Probably until the 1970s, it would be almost unheard of for a woman to ask a man to marry. But in the 1970s, there was a large women's liberation movement in our country where women really pushed for more equality and equal rights. And ever since then, it would not be uncommon for a woman to ask a man to marry. I would still say 85% of the time, the man asks the woman. But especially among younger people, it's becoming more common for women to ask the man as well. It's unusual, but not unheard of.
What do you think about Pakistan?
Yes, in Pakistan, the woman opinion is very much important about the person he's going to marry, and women are usually asked that is she happy with the relationship or not. And yes, woman opinion matters a lot when you are going to tie some relation.
So I have a question. My question for you, Hamad, is if parents have decided that their boy is going to marry that girl, but the girl does not want to marry that boy, what happens?
Yes, in most of the cases, the opinion of the girl will be respected, and they will parents will be happy with the opinion of the girl.
Oh, okay.
In most of the cases, it happens.
Okay.
Just like in my case, my wife's father respect the opinion of my wife.
Mm-hmm.
And until he did not say yes to me, my father-in-law did not say yes to me until my wife say I am okay with him. I'm okay. I am agree with to marry with Ramzan.
I have a question. In a situation where the boy, the man's parents are no longer there, they're no longer with you, they died, what happens then? Does the young man get to decide who he wants to ask to marry since his parents are not there anymore?
Yes, he can ask about someone he loves, or he can someone can take care of him as well, being an elder, and can go through the process.
Okay. By the way, I don't know if you know this, even though I did ask my wife, I asked Michelle to marry me. She asked me out on a date before I ever asked her out on a date. She asked me out on 2 dates before I started asking her out on dates. So she was the one who initiated things between us, not me, my wife. She was my girlfriend at the time. Yeah.
That's wonderful. Okay, Mr. Tim, would you please tell us how long are people typically engaged before the wedding ceremony take place?
Yeah. That varies a lot in our country. I would say for a first marriage, it could be a year or 2 years. In my case, it was about a year and a half from the time I asked my wife to marry me to the time we actually got married. As people get older, as people maybe are on their second marriage, the time between dating and marriage becomes much shorter. And sometimes they may marry somebody they met 3 months ago. So I think that is a factor. But I would say typically, maybe a year is not uncommon. And that's partly because there's a lot of things that have to happen to plan for the wedding. It's a very complicated process. So the more complicated your wedding, the longer time between engagement and marriage.
Hamad, please tell us about Pakistan. What people do in Pakistan?
Yes, in Pakistan, marriage process is not too long. It depends upon the situation. Usually, people if there is an engagement ceremony first, which is not a marriage ceremony, engagement ceremony, in which two families do a joint party and they enjoy the start of the relationship. And after the engagement, it takes 5 to 6 months, or it can go to maximum 1 to 2 years. After that, they decide to do marriage, and the marriage ceremony consists of 3 days, and those 3 days are named as Mehndi, Barat, and Walima. So these are the 3 days, and almost it takes 1 to 2 years to two families to make a process and end into a marriage ceremony.
Hamad, you go ahead of me actually. I was going to ask this thing. So I am going to ask you again the same question. So Hamad, will you please tell us how long are people typically engaged before the wedding ceremony take place?
Yes, as I told you that it depends upon the situation. Sometimes it usually takes 5 to 6 months, or it can go to 1 or 2 years, but it can be longer. It depends upon the situation, that whether both of the families are agree to bind the relation and do the marriage ceremonies. It depends upon the situation of both the families. When they find any situation in which they both are comfortable, they go for the marriage after the engagement.
So Mr. Tim, if we talk about customs during wedding ceremony, what do you tell us about our viewers?
What is the wedding ceremony like in America? It varies greatly because our country is such a diverse country. But a typical marriage will probably take less than an hour. So it's not multiple days. It's like an hour, but it will be followed by something we call a reception. Think of it as a party. So the wedding is the formal part. The reception is the fun party afterwards, where the bride and groom get to say hello to everybody, and there's a lot of food. A small wedding would be maybe under 20 people. A big wedding might be over 100 people. And some people like big weddings. The tradition used to be that the father of the bride pays for the wedding. That tradition is going away now. Now, oftentimes, both parents will contribute, both families will contribute, or the couple themselves may pay for their wedding.
Hamad, would you please tell us about the customs during wedding ceremony?
That here in Pakistan, there is also too much diverse cultures all across the country. But the main events which happens around the marriage ceremonies are Mehndi. Day 2 is called Barat, and day 3 is called Walima. On the day of Mehndi, it depends upon the both families whether they want to do joint ceremony or they can do separately. Bride and family can do separate ceremony, and groom and the family can do separate ceremony. And usually in this ceremony, there is a culture to wear some bright clothes, and females decorate their hands and feet by the special color mehndi, which is a color obtained from the plant henna, and it is a work of art which is designed on the hands, and this is a tradition. There is some dance parties and dholki. This is a type of drum which is used in that ceremony. And second day is called Barat. On this day, the groom's family go to this is hosted by the bride's family, okay, and the groom's family come in the form of what you can say a convey, or what you can say, I forgot that word at this time. They go in the form of a convey. You can say that groom's car is decorated with the flowers, and at the marriage ceremony they are warmly received by the bride's family, and there is a lot of food, and the marriage contract actually happens on that day. And the third day is called walima, which is actually hosted by the groom's family, and this is a general treat for all the family members, all the family and friends, and there is a gathering of about 200 to 500, or it can maximum go to 1,000. It depends upon the relations, and these are the cultures of which I have explained. And yes, one thing I forgot to say, that there is also some fireworks on the day of Mehndi and on the day of Barat.
Wow. Can I just say, marriage is much more complicated in your country. That's a lot of work.
Yes, that's why I'm too late. It is a start of a complicated life, and
Yes, I guess
with
so.
some complexities.
So, Mr. Tim, would you please tell me, do people outside of the family get to see the bride on the wedding day?
Oh, yes. The tradition is that the groom, the husband to be, is not allowed to see his bride on the wedding day until the ceremony itself. But everybody else absolutely can see the bride. Absolutely. Traditionally, the bride used to wear a veil over her face, and then she would lift it up at the altar where they're getting married. Then that's the first time on the wedding day that the husband would see her, when she lifts the veil. That's very traditional. Nowadays, most brides probably don't wear a veil in the United States unless they're wearing it for fashion, to look exotic. Typically, the bride no longer wears a veil. And yes, everybody gets to see the bride the day of the wedding, before the wedding. My wife, when we got married, I did not see her on the wedding day before this wedding, but she walked down the aisle, and she did not have a veil. She had a long, beautiful white dress. White is the traditional color of a wedding dress in our country. And the groom, the husband, he wears a tuxedo. That's traditional. And I wore a tuxedo, which I can no longer fit into.
Ahmad, would you please tell us what people do if they are outside of the family can see the bride on wedding ceremony in Pakistan?
Yes, it is similar to the culture which Tim has explained in the America, that the groom is not allowed to see the bride until the Brat day. And this culture mostly in the some conventional cultures, and even they do not have saw their face even when they were choosing the relationship, because there is arranged marriages there. But now with the time, in this modern world, this culture is now abolishing with the time. And there is I have explained earlier that there is a joint ceremonies of Mehndi even now.
Okay, my last question, and it's very interesting question actually. Does new couple typically go on a honeymoon in United States of America?
If they have the money to, they will. Sometimes the honeymoon is paid by one of the parents. If the parents of the bride paid for the wedding, sometimes the parents of the groom, the husband, pay for the honeymoon. But that is the tradition, to try to go away for a honeymoon, and it usually involves anywhere from 5 to 10 days going to some beautiful place away from everybody else, and it's just the bride and groom. The tradition is not to invite friends or family to come along. It's just the husband and wife. That's their tradition, and that still is part of most weddings in America today.
Ahmad, what about honeymoon culture in Pakistan?
Yes, there is a honeymoon culture in Pakistan. Usually, the couple go to the picnic areas for a week, or some less than a week. They usually go, if they are from Punjab, they go to the northern areas, and that's a common culture here in Pakistan, that couples go to the honeymoon after the marriage ceremony.
Okay, that's all for today's session.
Thank you so much for watching this video and hope you guys enjoyed this video, and don't forget to subscribe Across the World YouTube channel. Press the bell icon to receive notification about our latest videos. I will be back with another episode of Across the World YouTube channel. Thank you so much.